Hi, it's Dreyer and welcome to the Financial Freedom Challenge, where our mission is to help you to create, to grow, to protect and to enjoy a life of abundance. And today I'd like to talk to you about the 3 different levels of financial freedom. And perhaps before I do that, let me quickly tell you the story of how it started and how I started defining the 3 different levels. In quick, the 3 levels is, first of all, financial independence. The second level is financially free. And then the third level is financially rich. So let's start with financially independent and what that means. Way back in 1984, I basically lost my job because some colleague of mine stole my commission. The manager backed him, and on a Monday afternoon, they called me in, and the manager said to me, "I want your car keys, your wife's car keys, and I'm giving you till Friday to transfer your bond from the perm to your personal name, because as of this moment you are fired unless you go back to the client, tell the client that you're in the wrong, tear up the affidavit that the client gave in regarding this whole story, and you forfeit the commission." So in that split second, for the first time in my life, because since 82 I wanted to understand why is it that the majority of people stay poor. And suddenly, like instantly, I understood that it's because of the system and the way that the system is set up in order to keep us poor. So the first thing and the only reason why I worked was to get an income. And the reason why I needed that income was to maintain my standard of living. And the reason why I wanted and needed that much money at that stage in my life was because almost 80% of my income went on debt repayments, like the 2 cars that I had, one for me, one for my wife, and then of course my house. Those were the big expenses that I had. That simply means that if your income is 10,000 Rand, as an example, and you pay 8,000 Rand just to maintain a certain standard of living, it means that you can survive with 2,000 Rand, right? And that is a lot easier to get to than to try to get to 10,000 out of 10,000 Rand. Okay, and that's where basically it started. So I went back to the client, told him that I'm busy learning a life lesson here, and that's the best investment that I've ever made, because I'm going to figure out how to get out of this rat race. And so the first level is to become financially independent. And the plan that we devised, Tanya and myself, we sat down and we started calculating what this thing, our standard of living was, and then if we could be debt-free, what we would need it in order to maintain and keep that standard of living. And I define that as financially independent. Now, we should be careful for the word financially independent, because there's a lot of people that will tell you that they'll help you to become financially independent. But be careful not to lower your standard of living. In other words, if I could maintain the same standard of living and still do the things that I've done while I had all this debt, that is what we call financially independent. Because a lot of people at retirement, you're going to find that they start lowering their standard of living. In other words, they scale down in terms of the cars that they drive. They scale down in terms of where they stay. They start buying smaller places and cheaper places. They do not go out as much, or they don't go out at all, or they don't take holidays. And that is not what I mean when I say financially independent. In other words, I wanted to keep my standard of living, but at the same time, enjoy the things that I was enjoying at a relative young age of 27. Right, so that's the first level. Later on, in 1987, when I started formulating the Wealth Creator strategy, I realized that there's different levels. Actually, I knew it before, but that's the first time that I formulated this. And that is that the first level is to become financially independent. But financially independent, if anything happens, like a geyser breaks and stuff like that, suddenly you haven't made provision for the capital, and the moment that you go into the capital, that is when the problem starts. Or the moment that you need capital and you haven't got that capital, or for a new car, something like that, then you are going to run into a problem. So to become really financially free, the next level, you need double the amount that you need in order to be financially independent. Right. So that is to make provision for those unforeseen stuff. And then also there's a level above that, and that is what we call financially rich. And that level simply gives you 3 times more. And this is actually where you can, while you're working, can also start applying the Mercedes principle, where a third goes towards your growth, a third goes towards security, and another third goes for your standard of living or your Joel money. Right, that is the 3 levels. Now, if I can recap, it is make sure that you get to the first level as quickly as possible. And that is basically to pay off your debt. Unless, of course, you know how to get to your financial freedom growth rate. Because if you know your financial freedom growth rate, how hard your money must work for you, and you can get to that, then it's almost, I would not pay back my debt if I know how to get 80%, and by repaying my debt, I'm getting, say, 10.5 or 12%, depending on your debt situation. But in 1984, I did not know this, and this is the reason why we started by paying off our debt. So if you know how to get to your financial freedom growth rate, that's going to be the quickest way, because your money is going to work at 80 or 90 or 100% for you. And then at a certain point, you can simply say, okay, I'm going to get rid of my debt. But if you don't know, make sure that you start with a debt eradication plan. I've got a course on that. And that course is basically, I developed that. The outline of the course in 1984, that was a plan for ourselves to get out of debt 5 to 7 years later. And then because of the accelerator principle that I discovered later on that year, I literally became financially independent in 3.5 years, 3 years and 7 months to be exact. The challenge that you've got, determine your financial freedom growth rate. If you do not know how to get to your financial freedom growth rate, then simply start paying off debt. And I don't care how you're doing it. There's different methods that you can do it. What we've done, we looked at the smallest debt that we had, the debt that would be paid off first, and we started pushing that, and then we rolled that, and that's where the accelerator principle comes from. Roll that over to the next debt, and then lastly to the house. And other people will tell you start with the highest interest and pay that off first. I don't care as long as you've got a plan. And I think that is how to take action. Go and sit down, do your budget, and determine if you've got a surplus. If you haven't got a surplus, how on earth are you going to create a surplus in order to speed up this process? Right, so in closing, always remember that in order to create financial freedom, you must make sure that today is going to be a perfect day. This is the start of a day, and I can't wait for this day. We've got a lot that we want to do and a lot of places that we want to travel. And I'll give you a snapshot of what I see at the moment, but it's incredible to wake up and to be in a situation like this. But that simply means that in order to create this type of life, that there will never be a day in your life that won't require you to take the responsibility to have the intent and to know exactly what it is that you want. In my case, in 84, the only intent that I had was to become financially independent and to pay off all my debt as quickly as possible. That was my intent. Later on, I developed, the different levels of financial freedom and stuff like that. But the first intent is to become financially independent, and the quickest way to do that is simply to pay off your debt. And that's going to take a lot of time. It's going to take time. It's going to take the right mindset, because you are going to be confronted with a lot of temptations in terms of a new car and a better house and a better standard of living and more meals and stuff like that. And you need to have the right mindsets and stick to those mindsets. And then, of course, you have to take massive action. Consistently doing what needs to be done is the only way to get these results and to really become and be financially free. So every single action that you're going to take today is either going to move you one step closer to or one step away from financial freedom. Therefore, if you want to guarantee yourself financial freedom, I want to challenge you today, to make today a perfect day, to work out your budget, and then to stick within that budget to start with which is going to take a lot of effort. And then secondly, to pay off that debt so that you can get to that first level as quickly as possible. And then at the same time, make sure that your passive income is more than your active income that you need after all your expenses, in other words, your standard of living has been settled. Right. So make sure that you stick to this each and every day. And it's going to take effort, but I promise you it is worth your while. We've been doing this now for the last 23 years, where we can just decide to do something and in the spur of the moment do it. And it's incredible. Right, so as always, if you've got any questions or comments or suggestions to become financially free, please leave them in a comment box below, and I will help if I can. Remember also to subscribe to my blog, that is blog.hannesdreyer.com, if you're not already on it, and maybe it's the first time that you hear this. Or you can subscribe to my YouTube channel, that is where I'm also posting this whole series of 91 days. That is, of course, if you want more strategies and ideas on financial freedom. And then regarding my heart rate challenge, here's feedback. I've done what I was supposed to do this morning already. It's early. I'm watching the sun as it's starting to come up. I think it will be up within the next minute or three. Perhaps let me turn it around so that you can have a look at it. And then also please share this video with other people if you think that it can benefit them. And I really hope that you've enjoyed this video. I really enjoyed making it for you, and I really hope that this can help you on your way to financial freedom. Right, I'll see you then tomorrow.